Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, that's a whinge from somebody dragged kicking and screaming from the tar shop. If you're going to censure a Prime Minister that has presided over the most massive change in the regulatory environment in the Australian economy, opened us up to be at our most competitive position internationally, presided as Treasurer and then Prime Minister over the creation of 2.25 million jobs in this community at the rate of 160,000 a year in comparison to 55,000 a year when your now leader as Treasurer was in office. If you are going to censure a Prime Minister who has presided over an increase in the productivity of our workforce on an annual average rate of 2.9% for the last 5 years, who has done that in the face of our industrial relations system, as opposed to that which you advocate from New Zealand, where the productivity increase there has been 1%. If you are going to censure a Prime Minister that has presided over the creation of superannuation opportunities for every worker in this country, that has taken a position where there were 40% covered by superannuation arrangements to now, where virtually the entire workforce is covered by superannuation arrangements. If you're going to censure a Prime Minister who presided over the healing process of Mabo in the native title legislation, if you're going to censure a Prime Minister who presided over the creation of the Working Nation Statement, that statement, which is now with programs acknowledged around the world as the correct way of tackling unemployment in a situation where massive technological change has produced circumstances where you require an enormous training effort by the government. If you are going to censure a Prime Minister that as Treasurer presided over the establishment of Medicare and universal health coverage for all Australians, with you in solid opposition right the way through it, if you are going to censure a Prime Minister who has created a situation where pensioners in this country get 25% of average weekly earnings, if you are going to censure a Prime Minister who has presided over a substantial restructuring of our taxation system, taking the top rate down from 60% to 47% and moving middle-income earners down from about 35% to the mid-20s, you have got to do an awful lot better than that. And above all, if you are going to do those things, one thing that you absolutely require, and I'm glad to see you've all disappeared because you don't want to hear it, the one thing that you absolutely require is a policy. Impossible. You actually need...
Order.
You actually need...
I've said before, it's hard enough controlling them on the floor without the
There is a real problem as far as that is concerned. A few of us on this side of the House suspect you might actually have one. We have been... Oh, we do. We do. Yes, we know about yours. Yours is our policy on black spots. We know about Tim's policy. And we know also about the industrial relations policy. Many people here will not comprehend this, but many people here ought to know, and many people, if there are any listening outside this place, ought to know this, that a week before the last election campaign, John Howard came out like one of those chaps that you occasionally unfortunately see around the marketplaces in a big greatcoat. He said, under this greatcoat, I have an industrial relations bill. It's all worked out. That industrial relations bill is there.
Ready to go.
Line by line, ready to go. The moment we get into office. A reasonable question was asked by the Prime Minister at that point of time. Could we see it? It's a week before an election campaign. The public might like to know what actually is in this bill. Oh, no. A fellow in leadership in the party is entitled to keep a little bit in his back pocket to be revealed afterwards. Well, it's 3 years. It's 3 years since then, and we just haven't seen that little bit of policy, which just happens to affect the livelihoods of every Australian, in potential at least, if you get into office. We get hints about what it might be like. When a chap turns up in Western Australia, now my home state's a long way away, and it's 2 hours behind in time, and you can occasionally hope the journalists over here will take no notice of what you say over there. And you get over there and you talk to Richard Court, who's introduced a massive array of draconian legislation. And you say to Richard, now Richard, we think that this is a pretty good proposition that you've got here on the table. knocking workers out of a right to organise, putting them in the place where they have to get contracts, which will suppress their wages. We are going to take you as a model. That's what we say when we stand before West Australian business. What Mr Court proposes is our model. Exactly. And we will be putting that model in place when we get into office. Now, in Western Australia, it is the habit of these groups, nurses, teachers, senior public servants, I'm afraid to say, in majority, to regularly vote Liberal. It's an unfortunate thing that I have to live with in Western Australia, but it is the case. That in majority, not all of them, in majority, they regularly vote Liberal. Right throughout the course of this year, every one of those groups has effectively been in some form of industrial action for months and months and months.
Well, there we leave the House of Representatives. Both houses will sit later today for what we believe is the last day for this year. There won't be a question time. Therefore, this is our last appearance for 1995. On behalf of all in the Parliamentary Sound and Vision Office who are responsible for this coverage of question time, may I wish you the compliments of the season. We expect to be back mid-February, but 1996 being an election year, who knows? Just stay tuned. But for now, goodbye from Parliament House.
Approximately 3 p.m. in accordance with